I think we can go ahead and get started. So to start out, I'd like everyone who hasn't already to, well, I'm going to be using Replit, and if you want to use Replit as well, then you'll have to make an account. I just sent it in the chat. And if you want, you can use your own text editor that you like, your own setup, if you know how to do that. But I'm just using Replit because I know it's something that everyone has access to. And if you do use your own setup, then I won't necessarily be able to help you if something goes wrong with that. So that's why I'm saying REPL, but whatever you want, it doesn't really matter. So yeah, can everyone give me a thumbs up when they have made a REPL account or signed in if they already had one? Okay, is anyone making an account right now? Okay, cool. Then I'll go ahead and get started then. Let me share my screen, and I'm going to go ahead and click share and new REPL. So I'm going to go ahead and make an HTML, CSS, JS REPL. I'm not going to bother naming this one because this is just going to be some random dabbles before we get into the big thing that we want to do. And I just want to talk about what HTML, CSS, JavaScript are, how they interact, and how you can use them. So let me start with this. All right, this whiteboard here. I've never used this before, actually, so this is exciting. So a wise man once told me that HTML, CSS, and JavaScript are like a house. So basically, you have the HTML, which is the walls of the house, the structure of the house. So you have the walls, you have the roof. Let me put on a little roof here. Oh no, I moved the line instead of drawing a new line. There we go. Yeah, so this is the HTML, right? The structure. It creates this basic building for everything else to build upon. It's just, they're just there. These are the walls. This is the structure. This is how it gets built upon. And then let me add a little window. That's gonna come in handy. Give me a second here. All right. So the CSS is the painting and the decorations. So the plants and things around it as well, I would count as CSS. Oh man, I can't find a bucket. Is there no bucket? Whatever. Here's what we're gonna do. It's gonna be, this is paint. So yeah, so this is the CSS right here. Perfect. And then the JavaScript is the mechanics of the house, the plumbing, the electricity. So maybe I shouldn't have used yellow because now I want to color this in as lights. But yeah, all that. So you get the idea. Thanks to my very helpful visual, I'm sure. Does anyone have any questions about that? Does that make sense? So the JavaScript is what makes it actually do things. Makes it like a livable house rather than just like a structure that's there. And you can live in a structure without electricity, plumbing, and you can live in a house without paint or the CSS. But you shouldn't. It wouldn't be comfortable, and all your neighbors would make fun of you. So that's why you want to utilize everything in order to make a more modern website. So with that, we can go ahead and get started. And I have lost my share. There we go. So let me go ahead and share REPL again. All right, so we're going to start with the very basics of HTML. So I made this REPL, and I hope everyone else also has an HTML file. So let's take a look at this structure here. Just right off the bat, it gave us some boilerplate code, which is very helpful, not to have to type all this up ourselves. And we don't have to look at every little detail, but I'm just gonna talk about each one real quick. So at the start, it just says, okay, this is an HTML file, so the browser knows. And then you can see that everything in here is part of this, tree structure, where all of these in here are children of this HTML tag. So all of this is where it starts, this is where it ends, and everything in between is just part of the HTML. And that makes sense. That's just where everything is. And then it gets a little more interesting when you look at the head and the body. So to make a quick summary, the head is just for the browser. It's information that the browser needs in order to figure out how to do it. You can see, okay, the char set, like what's the width you're going to use, things like that. What's the title here? So this is fun. This is if I click open a new tab, it says this is the actual title of my site, what it says in the tab there. So if I change this to, it'll let me type new site, and then I open it, you can see that it changed the title. So that's something that the browser uses to put it up in that tab there. And then we want to mess around with the HTML. You can add things into the body. This is what people actually see. So you can see there's this script tag here, and we will get to that later. This is where how it knows where to actually look for the JavaScript. And by the way, this one here is how it knows where to look for the CSS. You can change these names. These names aren't really they don't matter. They're not important. You can make them whatever you want, and you can have multiples of them too. But right now, we just have this style.css file over here, which has nothing in it yet, and this script.js file over here, which also has nothing in it yet. Everyone follow along? Okay, so now let's go ahead and add some stuff. So I'm going to just add in a basic h1 tag, whoops, not a high tag, an h1 tag, which is short for heading, right? Heading, not header. I always get mixed up. It's heading, right? Welcome to my site. And if I run this, it creates this bold text here. So this is a heading. And I'm not going to spend too much time today going over all the different tags like I would if you were the kids, because you guys can just look up all the tags on online. So I personally like W3 Schools, and a lot of people do. It's like the first thing that comes up in the Google search when you look up HTML tag or anything like that. So I'm going to send this in the chat. Again, if I can find the chat. I always misplace. Here it is. I always misplace that little bar thing. I move it on my way and I never see it again. Yeah, so this kind of shows you how to build like basically anything you want to build in HTML and tells you all about it. So like, for example, I can click on images here. It's like, well, that seems like a nice thing to add. And I can say, okay, so this is how I make an image. So I can take this tag here. I can say image, and then src equals, and then I'd have to actually get a link to an image. So Apple. I don't know why. That's always what I think of when I try to look it up. And I always want the fruit, but I always get the company. Here we go. So I can click on this. I can copy image location, or sometimes for the kids, I like to just have them go to view image and then copy it from up here, make sure they don't get it wrong. And they can be slightly different on different browsers. And then you have the Control V to paste into REPL. But yeah, now if I put this in here, whoops, I missed something. Oh, I need quotes around it. Okay, what did I do wrong? I did something wrong. Do you know, Eddie, or anyone, see what I did wrong? I'll try a different image. Image location. And yeah, y'all can do this too. You can find your own image and see if it works for you. Okay, yeah, something was just weird with that one image. But yeah, so I have it in the site. And then if I want to mess around with it, I can change more of its attributes. So inside this tag, each tag is going to have different elements to it. So they have the inner HTML text here, wrapped in between the starting tag and the closing tag. But then you may notice for the image here, all this is actually inside the first tag itself. And the image doesn't even need a second tag because what text is it going to have? So this src here is actually an attribute that it looks at to figure out what is this image actually going to be. So I can add other attributes. Like in the case of image, I can change the width attribute. I can say width equals like 50 and run it. And then that shrinks it down to a more appropriate size for my site. Is everyone following along with this so far? Great. And then if I want to change the way my site looks, I can go ahead and click on the style.css. So CSS, the basics of it are pretty straightforward. When you want to get something really specific, it can turn into kind of a nightmare. But that's okay. A lot of times Google searching and all that can help you out. And it's the same sort of thing where you're never going to be expected, I hope, to like know all the tricks you can ever do in HTML and CSS because you can always look them up. It's more about just knowing the basics and how they interact. So this is, all of the documentation for CSS from W3 Schools, or at least a tutorial. All right, so if I want to change the way my site looks, I can create something like I want to change the body. I want to change the style of the body. So I just type body, and this will change every body tag in the index.html and all of its children that inherit these particular attributes from it. So I can say the body, I want to say color blue. And so what this is going to do, if I hit run, it turns the text blue. So this just changes the color attribute of the body, and the body doesn't have anything that it really wants that uses that color attribute itself, but it's one of its children does. The H1 that I added has a color attribute, and that's what it uses to refer to the text color. So that changes, and that'll be true of any other tag I add into the body. I can add a paragraph here with P and say website, and then close it. And here, and it is also blue. And then if I wanted to, whoops, there are other things I can change, like I can do the background color. I'll do gold. And you got to make sure you have semicolons here. That is one big thing that can get you, is you do need to have a semicolon in CSS. Unlike, a lot of scripting languages, JavaScript, Python, the HTML and CSS, if you make a mistake, it'll try its best to figure out what you meant and not tell you that anything is going wrong, and that can be very problematic. So you got to be careful to make sure you do everything right and look out for little things like that, like a missing semicolon, if something does go wrong. Does anybody have any questions about this? Okay, cool.
Sorry,
I
have a quick question.
Yeah.
You mentioned that these attributes would apply to any children of body. How common is it to have tags like nested inside of one another? And how
Very
often
common.
is that used? Oh, okay.
Yeah. That's basically the basic kind of flow that that websites tend to use. Like if you just like well, maybe not on REPL, but if you use your browser's tools to inspect the code. So I right-clicked here and said inspect element, and you can look here at just Google's site, and you can see that you have nested elements inside nested elements inside nested elements. It's pretty standard to do it that way. Largely for that reason, so that you can apply a style to one thing and it'll apply to everything inside. Because usually you want a consistent style across your page.
Okay, rather than just assigning classes to each individual one.
You could also do that. So I mean, if you look in here, they probably also do a lot of that. You can see that every div is its own like individual class here, which we're going to get to in a second. So that they could act very specifically towards each element. So actually both work. But yeah, you do generally nest elements within each other quite a lot in order to get these very specific, properties and these very specific results. So, it just keeps going deeper and deeper and deeper.
Cool.
Great question. Cool. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and yeah, so I will talk about I guess first IDs. So if I want to make more paragraphs, right? If I make a second paragraph, and put this in, and I decide I want the paragraphs to be a different color. I want them to go back to black. I can just go ahead and go into my style.css and add this paragraph tag, and I can say color black. Oops. And it'll change them back to black. Does anyone have any questions about this? So, sorry, I know I asked and then didn't give time to respond, but I should mention that, it is still inheriting the blue from the body, but then that gets overwritten by the fact that it is a paragraph. So it'll take priority, just looking at what it itself does. And then if it doesn't have anything, like it still has a yellow background because it doesn't have a background color of its own. So what does it use for the background? It looks to the body and just uses that. And if the body doesn't have the attribute, then just use whatever the default is for whatever setting you're looking at. By the way, Eddie or anyone who knows, am I using the right term here, attribute, for these properties here? Is that the right term? CSS attribute?
I'm gonna look into that.
Yeah, but cool. And then if I decide I want this paragraph to be different, like, I have a bunch of paragraphs, I want them all to be black, but this one is extra super important. I really want to know that it's seriously cool. I want it to be green. I can, one way I could do it is to use an ID. We'll call it green.
So yeah,
and then if I'm,
they're called CSS properties.
Properties. Okay, thank you. Yep. So these are properties, not attributes. Yeah. So if I want to say, all right, the green the green paragraph is going to be green, I can just say not hashtag. No, it is hashtag green color green. And then again, this will take priority. So this is a part of the body, and it's a paragraph, and it is the thing that I've decided is called green. So based on that, it wants to be blue, black, and green. And what does it choose? Well, it's going to choose what it specifically was told to do. It's like if the teacher says, all right, class, go ahead and go to recess, but Alice, stick around and talk to me. Alice is going to be like, well, I'm part of the class, but she told me to talk to her. What am I supposed to do? That you're gonna talk to the teacher, because that's obviously what they want you to do, even though you are also part of the class. So same thing for CSS. But yeah, so with that in mind, oh yeah, so another way to do it, and the way you'll often see in practice, is, so this will only work for specifically this paragraph. If I want to make another green paragraph, I'd have to give it its own ID and do the exact same thing. So more commonly than IDs for this specific thing, you'll often use both for different things. You'll see that with the JavaScript. Instead of saying ID equals green, I'm going to say class equals green. And so classes can apply to any number of elements. They don't even have to be the same type of element. Just any number of elements can have a class, and they will apply whatever that class is, all of those properties, to themselves, just like with an ID. So in order to do that, I can't say hashtag green. If I do that, see, nothing, it doesn't work, because it's still looking for the ID green. That's what the hashtag means. Instead, I put dot green. That tells it to look for the class. So now I could have as many green paragraphs or as many green things as I want, and they will all utilize that color green, as long as I go into the HTML and add that and change that class attribute to be the green class. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. So For the JavaScript, I could add a little button here, but I think I just want to jump in right into the big thing that I want to do, which is to make a Tic Tac Toe game. Jimmy, what's up?
Oh yeah. So so like when do you use classes and when do you use IDs? Because I always get confused by that. Like, can I just use like them interchangeably, or like what's like the
So
difference
my
between them?
understanding, and Eddie, you can weigh in on this, but the default tends to be classes, honestly. Like when in doubt, just use a class. But often in JavaScript, you'll need to access a specific element, in which case you want to use the get element by ID function, which as we'll see. And in that case, you want to use an ID. So yeah, if you're just changing it with CSS, and you don't intend to do any JavaScript on it, you just use a class, because the advantage is you can add more similar things to that class later and not have to redo any work. And if you do end up needing to use it, well, you can also give it an ID. Let's see. What happens if you reference an ID more than once on a page? I'm not sure. I would guess that it's the second one on the page just takes over the ID. I don't know. Eddie, do you know?
I'm actually going to confirm that right now.
Yeah, if I had to guess, it's the second one on the page will replace it. You know, IDs in my mind, I don't know if this is technically the way to think about it, but IDs are basically like assigning a variable in another language. That's kind of how I think of it. And so far, that mentality and that logic hasn't let me down. So I would think that as the browser reads through the document tree, it figures out like, oh, this has that ID, and then it sees the next thing and says, oh, this has that ID. And Eddie is testing that. But I guess I could have tested it here. What's this chat saying? So by reference and ID, like you shouldn't assign an ID to multiple things. I'm not sure what you mean by reference and ID. Like you can, yeah. So you should not have multiple things be an ID. An ID represents one element. And then classes can be as many elements as you want. Yeah. So does anyone have any questions about any of this? Great. It's also worth noting that this indentation and line stuff, like line breaks, they don't matter to HTML. But you should still indent everything that is nested within a tag just for readability, and you should have each element be its own line, unless except in special cases, just for readability.
Okay, so to answer that question, it is dependent on the browser, actually, I believe.
Okay.
Most of the time, even if you give multiple elements the same ID, it'll apply the same CSS. Though ultimately, you probably should only have one ID name per element, and you should try to avoid having the same named IDs for different elements.
Do you know what the JavaScript would get if you tried to get a specific ID?
I think for that, it'll probably look up for the first one.
The first one? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that would make sense. It just goes through the tree. Yeah. Cool. So anyways, if nobody has any questions about this, I'm just going to go ahead and make a new REPL. And I'm going to call it Tic Tac Toe. And I will create the REPL. And so it's going to start with the same code, the same boilerplate code. And I'm just going to go ahead and get started on making a tic-tac-toe board. So my idea is that I want to have just a board, and I want you to be able to click in order to make your move. And I'm not going to bother with making a computer player for a day. Like maybe if there's extra time, then you can try doing that yourself, or we can do it together. But I'm just going to have it alternate. So X makes their move, then O makes their move, and so on and so forth. And hopefully we can get to the point of actually checking for a winner and declaring them the winner at the end. But let's start with just the basics. I want a board, and I want to be able to click on a button in order to make my move. And so I kind of gave away what I was going to do. I wanted to have an element that we can click on, and I've been saying button because that's what we're going to use. We're going to use a button. So I'm going to start out. There's 9 there's 9 spaces in tic-tac-toe board, so I'm going to have 9 buttons, 1 to represent each space. So I'm just going to say button, and I know I'm going to be messing around with the CSS of them, so I'm just going to give them a class right now. Class equals space, square. I like square. And then it's not, so whatever I put inside here is what the text of the button says. Like if I put click me and hit run, you see this little click me button here. But by default, I want them to not have anything in there, right? Because you'll click on it to add an X or an O. So I'll just put nothing in there. And I end up with this kind of weird looking button here. It doesn't have any text, so it just kind of goes to the minimum size. And I'm going to go ahead and just make 9 of these. So I'm going to go ahead and do some copying and pasting. So do this. Okay, whoops. I should have been more careful with my indentation. And so that should be 8. So I will just add 1 more. All right. So now I got 9 buttons. But they're not arranged in a tic-tac-toe shape. They're just all in a row there. So how do I fix that? And there's a couple ways. So there's probably a lot of ways to do everything that I'm talking about. But I'm just going to pick the way that I think is simplest and easiest to go with. Basically, I want these 3 to be separated from these 3, and these 3 to be separated from the other sets. Basically, I want each one to be in a set, and I want each set to be its own row. So in order to do that, I need to section them off into their own little group, into their own element altogether. And for that, I'm going to use a div. So a div just kind of groups them all into one element altogether. So it's its own little section. It doesn't really do much besides that. They're used a lot just as like a generic way to customize and assign classes to specific areas. You saw that when I inspected Google, everything was a div. They're used all over the place. And the reason this is helpful is because divs by default just kind of inherit the properties of their parents, just like most things. And so it's going to have the same width as the parent, which is just the whole thing. So if I put all of these into a div, each group of 3 into its own div, and I'm indenting just for readability. And everyone, please follow along with this and do this as well. Now they are lined up in a tic-tac-toe board because these elements, again, by default, take up the whole screen. So there's no room for the next one. It just goes to the next line. So now it is more arranged like a tic-tac-toe board. It doesn't look anything like a tic-tac-toe board. We'll get to that, but it is arranged like one. So has everyone been able to do this? And does anyone have any questions about this? Okay, great. So now let's make it look a little bit more like a tic-tac-toe board. So I'm going to go into the style.css for this. And I already made a class because I knew it would come in handy. I'm going to modify the square class. So it changes all of my buttons inside the tic-tac-toe board. I could just use button for right now, but that might not be too scalable because what happens if I want to make other buttons like a start and a refresh button or, choose your player, right? So let's just focus on the square class and change all of those. So I'm going to cheat and look at the CSS that I experimented with before, just to make sure I'm doing it right. So to start out, I probably want them to be squares, right? So I'm going to say height 50 px, just 50 pixels, and width. Actually, Eddie, is that true? These are just pixels, right? I've always assumed that, but I don't actually know that. Like, do they scale differently on different screens? Okay.
Yeah, so pixels would be like the default you'd use.
Yeah. Cool. I just never really thought about what px stands for, and I wanted to be sure I wasn't spreading misinformation.
Yeah, it stands for pixels. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought so, but just in case. All right. So this is good. But let's clean it up a little bit. Why don't I go ahead and make the background white. let's give them a border. So some properties can have multiple parts to them. And again, this is all documented. So I'm going to say the border is 1 pixel thick. It's a solid border as opposed to like dashed or anything like that. And let's just make it black. And this is looking more like a Tic Tac Toe board. But let's move them a little closer together, make it a little clear what's going on. So I'm going to go ahead and say like margin right. So how much of a buffer they have in between each button. Again, I did a little trial and error to test this out. That's how I arrived at these numbers. I don't just magically know. And margin top, -1px. And now they're looking more like a regular game board. Does anybody have any questions about this?
Does it matter the order in which you write your CSS properties? Like, could I write my margins at the top? Could I put the
in this case, it does not. These do not get in each other's way. But well, I think within brackets, I can't think of an example where it would matter. Eddie, I don't know if you can. But it can matter if you're applying multiple classes, which is something that we'll do. That's something that if we have time for, we'll do that. We'll make it so that these top and the sides are shaved off. Yeah, in fact, I'll actually just do that right now. I'll go ahead and add a top class. I won't do all of them for the sake of time, but it'll be the exact same thing. And I'm going to say border top, none. And then I run it and nothing happens because I don't have anything in the top class. So I'm going to go back to my index.html and say all these squares on top are not just in the square class, they're also in the top class. And this is something you can do. You can apply multiple classes to an element. And hit run. And now they do not have their top border. And you can do that for all of them. And you can have several classes. In fact, it'll be quick. I might as well just do this for completion. I'll do bottom, border bottom, none. And then, do it with right and left as well. Dot left, border left, none, and dot right. Border right. None. Okay, and now I need to actually apply this to my elements. So, this one is not just top, it's top left. This one is just top, it's not left or right, so it doesn't need anything special. This is right. This one is just left. This one has no additional classes, the one in the center, and then right. And then this one here is bottom left. This one is just bottom. And this one is bottom right. And now I hit run. And look at that. It has this board. Now to get back to your question, Jimmy, this didn't answer your question. So let me go ahead and answer your question now. If I go here and I say square at the bottom of this, all my hard work just went away. And that's because it applied all of these, and then it applies this. And because the margin rules that I use, the border rules, are just 1px solid black, it overwrote the rules that I applied up here. Does that make sense? Yeah. So order does matter when you're ordering multiple classes that are potentially going to overlap. But I can't think of an example where it would matter within here. Again, Eddie, were you able to think of anything why it would matter inside?
I mean, the only situation would be like if you're using like border and then like border left in the same thing.
Yeah.
But,
oh yeah, that makes sense. If I did this within the actual thing, yeah, that's a good point.
It depends on the certain properties, but most of the time it doesn't matter, but you'd have to be particular with the properties you use.
Yeah, so it is one of those things that you do want to be aware of, because those are the worst sorts of errors, especially again in CSS, HTML, and yeah, CSS and HTML, because they don't give you any sort of error. So if something's going wrong and it's not something you've seen before, you really can have no idea. And yeah, so exactly. That's David makes a good point. It's a cascading style sheet. That's what CSS stands for, and that's what it means. It cascades through all of these, applying them in order. Great. So does anyone have any questions about this so far? Great. So now I have my squares. So let's go ahead and actually make them do something. Let's add in some JavaScript. So I'm going to go into this JavaScript function here. And something I wasn't paying attention to. Yeah, I actually, so never mind. We'll get to that in a second. So I'm going to go ahead and go to script.js. And I want something to happen when these buttons are clicked. So in order to do that, I need to make a function that I attach to the event of them being clicked. So I'm going to say function. This is one of the ways to declare a function in JavaScript. On click, I'm going to be lazy with names. And then I'm going to put curly brackets. So this is how you can tell what is and is not inside the function. As opposed to something like Python, the indentation doesn't actually matter. Line breaks don't actually matter, but you should still utilize them for readability. The only thing it actually cares about, though, are where you put your semicolons, and I guess where you put your where you put your curly brackets and where you put your semicolons. So I want when this thing is clicked, I want something to happen. I want to change the inner HTML of this button into some character. We're not there yet, though. I do want to just make something happen, and we can see it in action. So I'm just going to go ahead and have it. What am I going to do? I'm going to have it change the background of the whole thing. So document.body.style.background equals been a while since I've done this. I guess I can use just this color string here, right? Do I do 6 of them? Oh yeah. Does this work? I guess we can find out. So I'm going to go back into index.html, and in order to make sure this function actually runs, when I click on something, I need to go into my element that I want to apply it to, and say change the on click property and say that is just on click, and then parentheses, whoops, and then quotes. And so this only applies to the first one right now. Okay, it didn't work. What am I doing wrong? Is there? Okay, yeah, the console's not saying anything. Eddie, you know what I'm missing? Check here, actually. In my good one.
Let me see your JavaScript, possibly.
Yeah. Because it also isn't saying that it's not a function or anything like that.
Right.
But
that should be good.
Well, this is all I really want to check anyways. Clicked. All right, and then hit run. And then, okay, so it is clicking it, and then something about changing the background. Does it have to be background? Well, I can't do background color like that.
Yeah, I think FFFFF.
Oh,
is
it's just
white.
Oh yeah, one too many F's, isn't it? Or
yeah, it's white. So that's why.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, what am I thinking? Yeah, good thinking. Yeah, that's a silly mistake. Yeah, good call. I don't know what I was thinking there. Yeah, so that changes the background. That's funny. All right, cool. Yeah, so it was working the whole time. Tricked you. So anyways, that's not just enough though, because we want to change the actual button. And the reason why I didn't do that first is because we need to find some way, we need to have some way of getting the button. So first of all, does anyone have any questions about what I just did? I have lost the group of everyone's cameras. So everyone is good to go?
Wait, why console log? Why do you do that?
Oh yeah, so that's just the equivalent of print. Because if I typed print, it would try to print it on my printer. Yeah, console.log is just printing something, and it shows up in the console here. And in REPL, it provides the console for you. If you're doing this on your local machine, you can again just like inspect and look at the console here, and you'll see it here. So in fact, you can see on Google, it's telling you like, hey, if you were told to, paste code into here, then don't, because if someone's telling you that, they are probably trying to scam you or hack you in some way. So, don't mess around with this unless you know what you're doing. Thank you for that big warning. And they did that presumably with a console.log, a fancy one. Yeah, so anyways, I'm going to go ahead and go back into REPL and take out this code because I want it to apply specifically to the button. So I'm going to go ahead and add an argument or a parameter to the onClick function. I'm going to give it an event parameter. And that is going to allow me to change the button specifically, because this event parameter is going to tell me what I just clicked on. So this basically will, if I go back here and pass into the onClick function an event argument, and it doesn't have to be called event. It's not like a special keyword. HTML is just smart enough to know that when it's running this function, if I'm putting this random variable in here, it's supposed to fill this variable with the click event. That's just how the onClick attribute works. So it's going to provide an event to the function with a bunch of properties that I can access and use to do what I want. So I will go into script.js, and I can just have the event change the inner HTML of the button. So I will say event.target, and that's going to refer to what I just clicked on. .inner HTML equals, I'll start with just making it X, and then a semicolon. Now I hit run. And when I click on it, it puts an X in here. Now it made it a little funky. It kind of pushed it up relative to everything else. So I do have a fix for that. But first, let's see if we can get this working for all of them. And for that, I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste this into all of them. So those of you who are familiar with and value the concept of, dry, don't repeat yourself, you are probably, banging your head on your desk right now at this. You may be, screaming to yourself, surely there is a better way. Why do we have to do it this way? And there is. But I wanted to keep things simple and focus on the things we want to focus on for this workshop. Because it is, a little more complicated to have to do it with JavaScript. Obviously, much more scalable, though. If there were more than 9, you would really have to do it that way. But for now, this is fine. But yeah, you may be thinking, man, I really wish someone had come up with some sort of system or framework that encourages, making this button into something like a component that can be reused often. And I really wish there was a 3-week course that was going to talk about something like that. I don't know what to tell you. Anyways, for now, this is fine. So if I have copied and pasted all these in, I can fill them all with X's. And it gets weird because something about changing the text moves it up. I'm not gonna lie, I don't know exactly what's happening here, but I did a quick Googling for the solution, and I can make some guesses. But basically, all I need to do is make sure that it is aligned to the top. So I say vertical align. Top. So that, it can't really move up because it's already as high as it goes. So yeah, so now I can add X's into all of my buttons. So everyone go ahead and get to this point. Let me know if you have any trouble with it. And let me know if I need to switch. I should probably be on the JavaScript, or tell me if you want me to switch to a different document. And give me a thumbs up when you have this working and your buttons have X's. Okay, cool. A lot of people. Anyone still working on it then? All right, awesome. And everyone's getting everything so far? Cool. So let's go ahead and make it so that it's not just X. This is the easiest game for X of all time. They're the only one who gets to go. So they will always win. So let's make it so O can join the fun. So again, there's always a lot of different ways to do it. I'm gonna, keep things simple. rather than doing it necessarily the best way. So to start, I'm going to go ahead and keep track of who the players are. I'm going to make my variable by saying let players equal X and O. And so this is how you declare a variable in JavaScript. The first time you make a variable, you say let and then the variable name. You can also say var or const. Those will also create a variable for the first time. As far as let versus var, I'm not getting into that. Just use let. And you can research it yourself if you're curious. Just use let. Const is there for what you would expect. For constants, it's a good habit if you know the variable is never going to change. You're just using it to refer to something, so you're not hard coding something. Then use const instead. I suppose this could technically be const, but whatever. We're gonna use let for everything to keep it simple. Anyways, so these are the players, and I'm also gonna keep track of whose turn it is. And I'm just gonna do that as an index to this array here. So the players array, whoever's turn it is player 0 to start, and I will swap between that each time. So now instead of making it X, I can make it players bracket turn. And then I need to change the turn. So if it's 0, it's 1, and if it's 1, it's 0. So I'll just say turn equals 1 minus turn. Little trick in the CS61A hog is where I learned that one. But yeah, this just switches between 0 and 1. So now if you press the buttons, it switches between them. Does anyone have any questions about that? All right, cool. So there is an issue with this though, which is that I can just kind of click wherever I want. So it doesn't actually check if it's a valid move. So you can go ahead and make your move, overwrite what's ever there, and and they'll just switch to the next person's turn. We don't want that. We want a click that does not. But we want a click that's not in valid space to not do anything. So can anyone think of how I would change that? How I would make it so that if I click on a space that is filled, it just doesn't do anything? It's not a trick question. No suggestions?
Do we use like a two-dimensional array?
You could. I personally prefer. Okay, yeah. So we can use an array to check the winners. For now, we don't need to introduce one because we do still have the thing we're changing is actually here already, right? We already know that it's the button has the information we need. So for now, we don't really need to introduce a way of storing what's there because we already have it just with the button itself. That is good. That will be helpful later though if we get to that. But for now, we basically just need to check it. We just need to check, is this an empty space? And how do I check if something is true? Well, I use an if statement. So I say if, and in JavaScript, you have to use parentheses around your condition in the if statement. So if event dot target dot inner HTML equals 3 equal signs, an empty string. And then go ahead and just wrap these inside curly brackets. Okay, so in general, when you're checking for equality, you want to use 3 equal signs. 2 equal signs also works, but it's weird. Another thing that I'm not going to get into. JavaScript has a lot of that. Let's not get into that right now. Weird behavior.
The simplest way to explain it is 3 equal signs compares types as well, whereas 2 doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. So 2 will attempt to convert and compare the two. Which sounds great, but it can create some unintuitive behavior, just how it chooses to convert things. And that's the part that I'm not going to get into. So just when in doubt, use the 3 equal signs. So pretty much always. So yeah. Now if you run this, see you get in the chat. Okay, cool. Yeah, so yeah, good example there. Yep. So yeah, so now if I try to click on this space, nothing happens, and if I click over, then it's gonna be O, and then so on and so forth. Does anyone have any questions about that? All right, great. So this is kind of the important thing I wanted to get to. Like I will talk about adding winners, and we can do that, but we're approaching an hour, which is how long I said it would be. So if anyone wants to get going now, I think, unless Eddie, you disagree, I think you can get going and feel like you're ready for the upcoming workshop on full stack development. Do you feel like that's true, Eddie?
I mean, that's fine. I think it's fine. You can probably keep going.
Well, but yeah, so I do intend to keep going. But for anyone who needs to leave, after one last little spiel, like Eddie, do you feel like we covered everything they'll need to know, just about just to get them familiar with JavaScript and interacting with HTML, CSS?
Yeah, I think this is pretty good.
Okay, cool.
Just as a reminder, make sure you download Node for tomorrow for anyone who's gonna leave right now and need to go. But yeah.
Yes. But also, one last thing before you go, if you're gonna go. I do want to talk about like what we've been doing here a little more explicitly. So JavaScript accesses HTML through the document object model. And you saw that when I changed the body. So I'll go ahead and add that back in, although it's true for the buttons as well. But if I have this document object, just this keyword here, and it has a whole bunch of functions inside of it. And as well as just attributes, right? So body is one of the elements inside the document. And I can actually go, further into it. But for now, I'll just go ahead and say, all right, the body has a style attribute, which is just the CSS. So it is a literal one-to-one same thing as the CSS. So I can go into the style of the body and then change the background like I did. And yeah, then I can say equals same thing as before. All right, and then I run it, and then okay, I added too many zeros again. But yeah, you get the point. In order to do this, it follows this tree structure where everything is contained in the document. And it has, the root element HTML, again, that outer tag that everything is contained inside of as well. And then inside of that are all the different elements. And it follows this tree structure. And so JavaScript can utilize this document object model to make edits to the elements themselves, which is what I've been doing with the document body's background and with the buttons that's actually changing their inner HTML. So that's important. That's an important keyword there, document object model. And that's, I imagine, going to be pretty relevant in the workshops going forward. And it's sort of implicit in what we've been doing, but I wanted to talk about it directly. Okay, cool. So for anyone who does want to stick around and actually have this be a real tic-tac-toe game, let's make it actually check to see if there is a winner. And in order to do that, we are going to need to keep track of all of the elements inside the tic-tac-toe board, because right now, sure, we do know which button they clicked on, but we don't know exactly where it is in the game board, like which one's first, second, and fifth, so that we can actually go through them all and figure out what, check them all to see if there's a winner when we look through it. So obviously that information is in the document object model somewhere. And the question is just how to get it. And there are a couple ways you could approach it. Okay, does that element become? Yes, yeah, when you define a div, yeah, that element, you can reference that as well. And usually if you are going to reference a specific element, that's when you would assign an ID to it. And you can use the document.getElementById function. So right now I'm going to do something very similar, though. This isn't going to get a specific element. This is just going to get all of these squares. So I'm gonna put this. I'm trying. Oh, whatever. I'll just put this afterwards. I'm not gonna worry too much about organization for the sake of time. So I'm gonna let squares equal. All right. Thank you, Sachi. See ya. Document dot get elements by class name, and I'm going to give it the class name of the elements I want. So it's going to get elements by class name square. So this is just going to give me an array of all the elements that have the class name square. And the nice thing is it's going to be in the order they are created in the HTML, which coincidentally happens to be, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Probably should have zero indexed that, but you get it. So this is already the order that is intuitive to me. And we could break this up into a 2D array, like Kevin suggested. I personally prefer just keeping it a 1D array myself. And so that's what we're going to do because that's just what I did on my own. But a 2D array works just as well. And it's really just a matter of preference. So now we just need to scan all these to see if there's 3 in a row every time a player makes a move. So we need to scan all the rows, all the columns, and both diagonals. And, is there a reason I use single quotes instead of double? No, there is not. The single quotes and double quotes are interchangeable in JavaScript. Good question. Tic Tac Toe in general, I don't know if anyone's ever done it as a student, for their project with their students. I've never really found a way to check winners that I really love as far as elegance goes. But for now, what we're gonna do is I'm gonna give you guys this list of valid or array of valid. And so actually, I'll just copy and paste the whole line. These are all the valid combinations. Since there's only 8 of them, to me, it's easier to just write them all out and iterate through that array rather than to write a loop that goes through all the rows, write a loop that goes through all the columns, and write a loop that does diagonals, which you could do if you were doing a very large tic-tac-toe board. That would be the way to do it. But with only 8 combinations, I think that's fine. So I'll also include that into my own code here. So these are all the valid combinations. Yeah, thank you, Lulu. Go ahead and get going. Thanks. Yeah, so these are all the valid combinations that could potentially win the game for a player. So what I want to do is check to see if the player who just made a move won by going through these arrays. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm actually going to go ahead and put the this up at the top. Just define all my functions at the bottom. No, it should probably be the other way around, right? Yeah. I'll define all my functions first and then move everything down. It's bugging me to have a mixing and match. All right. So my squares are there, and then I'm also going to define a winner function. So I'm going to say function winner and give it a player. This player is going to be who just moved, and this is the way I find easiest. Is okay because the only way there could be a winner is if it's the one who just moved, and we'll call this whenever they make a move. That's the easiest way to check. So it's gonna return true or false for whether that player is a winner. So I'm gonna use a couple JavaScript tricks here to do this. But I'd encourage you to think about if you didn't know these tricks and wanted to do it yourself, how would you actually do it? Actually, I was going to use a for each, but I realized we haven't gone over regular for loop, so I'll actually just use a regular for loop here. So I'm going to say for actually wait, I'm totally drawing a blank now. JavaScript, you do have to say let I equals, right? Let I equal 0. I is less than whoops, not player, squares dot length and I plus plus. So for anyone who has not seen like a C-like language or Java or JavaScript before, this may look kind of crazy, but it's not actually too bad. This is just the information you would use in a while loop in a way. This is where you start. So if you have some variable, it just runs this once in the beginning. So it lets I equal 0 at the beginning of the loop. And then to continue the loop, it checks to see if this is true. If this is true, it continues, and if not, it stops. So this is literally just what you would put inside a while loop. This is the condition here. And then the last thing is, what does it do in between each loop? Well, it changes I plus 1. And this is just a shortcut in JavaScript. I could have put I equals I plus 1, or I could have put I plus equals 1, and those would both be the ways that you do it in Python. But Python doesn't have the plus plus, but JavaScript does. It has an even faster shortcut for changing by 1. Yeah, so does anyone have any questions about that? Cool, and make sure, yeah, these are actually semicolons that go in between here, not commas. That's a common misconception. Yeah, so basically for every element, I am going to check to see if that element is a winning combination. So I'm going to go ahead and just say, like, just for simplicity, I'll say, what I want to do actually here, I want this to be valid.length. I'm going to go through all the valid combinations here. So it's valid.length that I'm doing. I apologize for the mix-up. So yeah, so basically I'm going to go through every valid combo. I want to see if that combo is valid. So basically I want to iterate through every item in the combo and see if it matches the player. And if they all do, then they won on that row, column, or diagonal. So I could make another loop here. This is where I'm going to go ahead and simplify a lot by using the trick. I'm going to say if valid bracket I dot every, and then in parentheses. So this checks to see, as it's explaining here, this checks to see if every item of the valid array, which is, one of these from up here, because I'm inside this list. So like, for example, 0, 1, 2, is going to be true for whatever function I put inside these parentheses. And in that case, I want to see if the space in this index is the player. Does that make sense? So for example, for 0, I see, is item 0 of squares the player? And is item 1 of squares the player? And is item 2 of squares the player? And if that is true, then if for all of them, then that player won. Does that make sense? All right, and so I need to give it a function in here. And I'm going to do a quick anonymous function here. Kind of, this is similar to a lambda in Python. I'm going to say, so if it's given I want to check to see, wait, so not, oh yeah, I guess I can't use I because I'm already using it here. So J. So if this, equivalent of a lambda function is given J, which is in, for example, for the first one, 0, 1, 2, it checks to see if squares bracket J dot inner HTML is the player. So this is probably a lot. It's okay if you're not, don't fully get what happened here. That's not as important. But again, it's short, and I wanted to keep it short. I do challenge you guys to try and figure this out for yourself. Like do it with a loop on your own to see if you can. But we're just checking to see if every spot in squares corresponding to what is inside the valid array matches the player. So basically, yeah. So if everything equals the player variable, then we can just go ahead and declare, we can return true. So if it's, because if they match in any row, we can return true. Otherwise, we can just return false. All right, so does that make sense to everyone? Again, I know I introduced a lot of new notation, and again, this notation isn't really as important. All I'm doing here is checking to see if that row, or row, column, or diagonal, basically that valid combination actually matches the player for all of them. If it does, I say true. Yes, that player is a winner. And if it gets through all of them and none of them won, then I'm going to return false. So I just have to check that now inside the onClick function. After making the move, but before switching the next turn, I'm going to go ahead and just say if the player's a winner, right? So if winner, parentheses, players, yeah, there's a chat here. Let's see. Okay, cool. Yeah, Nick, thank you. So if a winner, parentheses, players, bracket, turn. So basically, if whichever player it is, because that's turn is either 0 or 1, so it's gonna be either X or O. If they're a winner, then I'm gonna go ahead and just alert players bracket turn. So that player won. Now I'm gonna go ahead and run it and hope that I didn't make a mistake. So I'm gonna do X, I'm gonna do O, I'm gonna do X, I'm gonna do O, and here, yeah, it says X1. And it should work for any combination. Now, there are other issues. Like I want to start a new game, and now things get kind of weird. Every time I make a move with X, it's going to say X1 again because I can keep playing on this board. If I want to start a new game, I have to refresh it. So there are other ways that could be improved. And again, I encourage you guys to try and add these basic functionalities, like starting a new game, adding a computer player, things like that. Anything you can think of to make it feel like a more natural tic-tac-toe game, since it's still a little jank right now. But this is the code that I have. And I'll also, let me get this to here, and then I'll just send this in the chat so everyone can have it. But yeah, so, I can stick around for as long as y'all want to help you figure out if anything was confusing or if this isn't working, or if you have a question for what you could do, then yeah, I'm happy to help. But for now, has everyone been able to get this? I know, again, particularly this part is a lot. And maybe I will just rewrite it as a loop if everyone's confused about that. But if it's working for you, then no reason to. Okay, thanks, David. Yeah, so I don't really have anything else. So again, I'm just waiting for y'all to, figure out any questions you have. And if not, if you feel like I have everything I want to have, then you can just go ahead and get going, and I'll just end the meeting once everyone is gone. But you can also stick around and ask me questions for as long as you feel like. All right, see you, Calvin.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Nick.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nick.
Yep.
Rock on, Nick.
Dinner now, but I'll see you tomorrow.
All right, see ya.
Thanks a lot, Nick. Thanks.
Oh,
Sorry.
all right, cool. So yeah, Eddie, you have any questions about that? Anything confuse you?
No, that was pretty good.
All right, cool. Yeah, so and it's good that you kind of know what we went over as well.
No, yeah, definitely.
Cool. So yeah, so I guess I'll see you and Casey tomorrow. I guess everyone tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah,
Sounds
again,
good.
if you guys need me to do anything, then let me know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it
See ya.
should be pretty good.
Yeah.